Hi, everyone. My name is Malte.
Hello. Yeah.
I'm the CTO for Vercel, and we're the provider of the front-end cloud and the creators and maintainers of Next.js. We work with customers such as Under Armour, Nintendo, Zapier, and many other of the largest enterprise brands in the world, kind of getting their web experiences to the best and most stable that they could be. And today I'm speaking with Mayank, who works at EssentiallySports, which is a global brand for sports entertainment use, I think, and which has gone through like a pretty substantial growth cycle over the last years. So great to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. Quite anxious as well. So, and it's definitely been a great journey for us over the last few years. And good to be here and talk about all the good things we've done, and I would love to share our learnings with everyone here.
Awesome. Actually, so I'm personally, like, I must admit, not a sports person. So maybe others aren't. Like, what is Essentially Sports? What are you guys doing?
So Essentially Sports essentially is a digital brand focused on telling best stories about America's favorite sports celebrities. So that pretty much sums up our vision, but in terms of business scale, in the last year we published over 400 unique content pieces every day and crossed 1 billion page views aggregated over the year.
Wow. By the way, before I joined Vercel, which was a year ago, I ran the desktop search team at Google, and that sounds like the type of site that I would have to deal with every so often.
Okay.
I'm glad you don't have that penalty anymore that you just talked to me about. Awesome. Like one thing that actually I think really is interesting, also in the realm of operations, is like you are an engineer, you are pushing code, but there's this news team who are pushing articles. Mm-hmm. So does that create any particular challenges on how you operate?
Well, so to answer that, it goes down to how we have evolved as a business. Initially, it was just a fun project. We bootstrapped with 3 CS engineers from university. That also kind of plays into that the company in terms it's very tech savvy. But back then, because it was more like a hobby, so we were just running this WordPress service somewhere. Everything was just tightly coupled into that single service. We would have themes to put out the user interface out there and the whole CMS system. And of course, when the website started getting big, the service would crash all the time. And there would be firefighting in the night. People would be just rebooting the service again and again. I recall somewhere in June, July 2019, there was one Sunday where we had Wimbledon finals. There was the Cricket World Cup as well, and a British GP. And, well, that was a disastrous night because we had that, like, really innocent WordPress service running somewhere, trying to do its job, and the engineers just pressing the reboot button. It was a bad day for the company because a lot of people in the content org, they worked a lot to make that day a big success for the company, but the technology didn't really stand up to that test.
Right.
And that's probably the origin story of how we have scaled from there to a point where I think this year we scaled from 800 active reader sessions to around 75,000 active reader sessions, and we didn't even realize it because we were out having drinks.
Yeah. And to clarify, now you're Next.js on Vercel going headless against WordPress?
Yes.
Is that the tech stack?
Yeah,
I actually love that.
Yeah, so we tried to make sure that we can decouple the publishing flow from reader or audience experience, because we want to invest in these two areas independently, also make sure that we don't introduce side effects into these two processes. These two are really separate processes from our point of view, and they also give us the necessary agility to be more adventurous when it comes to creating newer experiences for our readers, but at the same time being more conscious about how do we store data, what kind of things do we add to our CMS, and how do we kind of take care of that data internally. Yeah.
Right. Like, can you actually talk a little bit more about like the DevOps aspects of your scaling kind of adventure?
Of course. So initially, when we had that nightmare of a Sunday, we decided that, okay, this happened. So scalability, availability is definitely something that we need to invest in. We need a system that can scale on demand because we operate in a domain where virality is a really big factor. We focus on sports celebrities and their happenings in general, so we cannot predict when the loads would go up or when they would go down. So we needed a system that can scale effortlessly and efficiently. And over the course of figuring out different technology choices, frameworks that would work for us, we did decide to come to Next.js and then deploy that infrastructure for the front end on Vercel Cloud. Because it was a fully serverless architecture for us, which would mean that we would pay for the things that we would use. We don't have to maintain bulky servers, which would take the same amount of pricing all the time, every second. And at the same time, the framework also gave us a lot of things off the shelf, which we would have to invest a lot of effort into Bootstrap, like easy support for AMP integrations, which was really important for us. And the ability to have server-side rendering so that we can do SEO effectively as we port and decouple our WordPress monolith and kind of separate out the presentation layer.
Right. Yeah, we actually have a bunch of customers who have kind of a similar need to scale. Like I think the Grammys are a good example. Mm-hmm. Obviously, like they basically get almost no traffic and then a lot of traffic that one day. Like one of my favorite examples is actually WashingtonPost.com, who host their election experience on our side. And I think that's one of the highest pressure like things. And they had a similar, I mean, you know, in many ways, 2016 was a problematic year. And then 2020 went much better, right, for them. So they had they had a similar experience, I think, like keeping up that night. And then the feedback we got from 2020 was basically that this was like the smoothest election experience they ever had. And it's, I think, also a good example of like kind of iteration, where like, because this is such a custom app that's for this one night, and it also changes every 4 years because elections are a little bit different, where you kind of have to innovate really quickly. What was it like to like make that decision to go with a serverless stack at your company? Like, what was the process?
Well, the first and foremost, most important thing for us was to be able to scale. We wanted to be highly available, to be able to scale, and more so because we didn't want our system to have strong latencies to our content and our discovery processes, because search engines have a limited compute bandwidth that they allocate for discovery of content. If your website is not performant, you would get crawled less, which would mean that your content wouldn't get discovered as soon as you would want it to be discovered. And for a business like us, where virality is key and attention is limited, every second counts for the content to be out there for consumption from our readers. First we started out by making sure that how do we get to that point, and after that since we are a bootstrap company, we started optimizing on our cost overages. There is a really fine dance between compute and bandwidth, depending on your domain and how you deal with things. I think there is a lot of potential for you to fine-tune between those two elements and come to a point which can serve you from an economical point of view as well, and that's what we did.
Right. Yeah, I think for people who aren't that much into SEO, like the way basically Google can take down any site, but they're trying not to, right? Yeah. And like, I mean, especially for like large site like yours, they have like infinite content basically that could be crawled. Yeah. And so Google would crawl your site and they would try to do it as fast as possible, but if you start getting slower, they're saying, okay, oh my God, we have to back off here, we're going to take them down. And so the faster you respond, the more crawling you actually get done in the end.
And the penalty is also way bigger if you're already getting a lot of traffic, but you're failing the expectation of the crawlers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing that I find interesting, and we were chatting about this earlier, is kind of in this world of serverless and with a front-end cloud like Vercel, where like you're basically outsourcing the operations of your site to someone else's cloud infrastructure. but then you're also running your own backend. In your case, it's the headless WordPress.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think about kind of the connectivity between the serverless like front-end stack and your backend and the security aspects of it?
All right. So for us, we initially thought that we want to have more control over our data. So that's why we spin up our own VPC environments in a cloud service provider, with a cloud service provider. So apart from that, we didn't want our Vercel front end to directly hit our WordPress services. So we created an infrastructure pipeline behind the scenes, which kind of transforms content whenever there is some sort of publish event logged on WordPress, so that we could kind of completely decouple every and any API call that would go into rendering the pages, and then kind of base it off in a way that it's just static content for us. And then we kind of deal with multi-tiered cache invalidation, which is like a tricky territory, of course.
Right. Yeah, this is actually something we're investing a lot of time in, because cache invalidation is very difficult. I think one of the magical parts of Vercel is our ISR service, where you can kind of say, I have this piece of content and it changes every so often, and I can tell you when it changes, and we kind of guarantee that within a few seconds on the global delivery network, everyone gets a new version, which, like, you can build that yourself, but it's not easy, right? And,
of course, yeah.
And I think, like, when we talk about front-end cloud, like, what we mean is that you can go to, like, a back-end cloud and get all these primitives and put them together and, like, build these very sophisticated systems, but they were meant for these, like, extraordinarily, like, generic use cases, right? And if you instead you get something that's actually useful for publishing global front-end applications, then it just, like, the velocity of being able to kind of come to solutions goes up dramatically.
Of course, yeah. I would just like to chime into that this was also one of like the ways we went about deciding to go ahead with Next.js and Vercel. Like, the sheer amount of infrastructure investment that is there with Vercel, like front-end cloud, and the amount of bootstrapping that Next.js takes away in order to deliver a performant web experience. In order to do something in-house, that would take a lot of specialization, a lot of skill. And for us, we had to choose between the cost of ownership and cost of delegation. And I think for a really big amount of time since the start of our relationship with Vercel, that decision has been really great for us.
Awesome. Yeah, I think when kind of coming back to this topic of connecting your serverless, like, high-scale front end to the back end, like, one of the offerings that we recently launched, we call Secure Compute. I think will be kind of like and also what we see from the market, it's been kind of a game changer of basically squaring the circle of someone else kind of taking over your high-scale infrastructure, but being able to, like, securely tie that to the backend that all our sophisticated enterprise customers are running, like almost by definition, like, you have some form of sophisticated infrastructure, and you want to make sure that the connection is secure and stable.
Yeah, I think these kind of new services that Vercel comes up with, I think it's for me, I would be really curious to try them out, because sometimes we have use cases where we have really proprietary APIs. We don't want to be open on the internet for them. So in order to tie these two environments together would be a great use case for those kind of situations. Yeah, sure. I would take it up with my co-founder for sure.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about, like, team efficiency, developer experience, velocity. Like, how is that important for you, and how are you managing it with respect to Vercel?
Well, so our engineering team is quite small. So in terms of size, we have a content org of around 250 people, and they're powered by an engineering team of 4. So we don't need a lot of processes in place. We really want to empower everyone, which is 4 people in the team, to push to master and just put it out on production. The way it works for us is that we get really strong, fast feedback. We have processes in place where we have one-click redeployments. We can roll back to the previous version easily. We have a lot of observability in the system. We keep an eye out for our core web vitals, our page experience scores, and even our cost compute usages. So we have all the tools. We also have real-time visibility into how the content is performing. And
do you use our instant rollback feature?
yes, and it works for everyone. You don't need to be an engineer to use it.
No, I mean, you can put the RBAC controls in place that you want, but yeah, it's like one of the funny things is that Vercel itself is a Kubernetes app, and you can revert changes, but it takes a while, especially if you have web-facing connections and you don't want to break them. And so, but Vercel also runs on Vercel, and so we take advantage of instant rollback every day. Not every day.
Yeah.
We're not that bad at pushing code, but like it's definitely in the last week it's been utilized a couple of times. It's such a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Like let's talk a little bit about core web vitals and generally like your success metrics as an engineering organization for your web-facing properties.
Yeah. So our pursuit of core web vitals, it started around the time when we had that big availability problem with our website, because we got to know that the ranking algorithms with Google, they're going to include these vitals. And back then, when we just tested our website, we were kind of at 30 out of 100.
Oh, wow.
We're like, okay, this WordPress theme needs to go away as soon as possible. That was the start of the search for a great framework which can kind of bootstrap us in a way in which we don't have to deal with a lot of boilerplate, but we just have to write good code, performant code, and the bundling would take care of all of the things. So then we just ended up optimizing everything, like the LCP, the CLS. For CLS, we made sure that we don't bombard our audience with these random ads everywhere. We wanted to be aware of the fact that our audience would like to come to our brand to experience news. So the focus should always be news. The ads should be well declared out there that, hey, this ad is starting now. And after that, the content continues, not just like on your face kind of a thing.
Right.
That also helped with CLS because there is no shift when the page loads on first render.
By the way, I would like to kind of interject there because
Yeah.
I think it's a really important point of a revolution that's happening today. Like if folks are here in the media business and the way kind of ads has been working are through these like third-party scripts where you can effectively hand off control to someone else to manage that side of your business, which has many downstream consequences, including being problematic from a privacy point of view. And I think one of the core reasons why it's been like this is because it was convenience, right? It was so easy to just smash that script on your site and hope for the best. But like one of the things that comes with Vercel is that because you have a platform that controls the web delivery side, you can actually integrate things on a 1P layer that as easily as it would have been to use the 3P stuff, but you're fully in control of your data. So like the way, for example, Vercel's analytics products works is that you still only have to import, which actually is easier than a third-party script, like a piece of JavaScript for initializing the tracking, but the entire data flow is fully first-party and fully automatic. So both means you are actually know where the data is going, and you actually also you're not subject to ad blocking, which can be extraordinary. Like, I mean, in our audience is extreme, so we're right now actually migrating from an external service to Vercel's own analytics on our own site. And obviously we have a developer audience which has a higher propensity to use ad blockers. But we see about double the data on our very popular analytics product in migrating to our own, where it's going to our own pipeline and it's like inherently cannot be blocked because it's part of the normal requests that operate the websites. So it's been an interesting change. And obviously, if you get twice the data, you can the amount of time you get to, for example, to make decisions kind of goes down by half or even more, which is really interesting.
Of course, like I would totally kind of resonate with that point that slapping a script on your page is so easy. Like you almost tempted to do it every time.
Right.
And you incur huge penalties when it comes to Core Web Vitals when you do that. You don't know how many other scripts that one script would load. Like, you don't have that visibility. And of course, the data that gets tracked, there's a single perspective, and that's the perspective of the third party that you get when you use these scripts. And that's why for us, we actually capture first-party data ourselves because I think nowadays, and data is probably the biggest asset any brand can have, especially when they're scaling up, when they want to grow. Right. And having the accessibility to your own data and interpret it in a way which is more aligned with your domain understanding, I think that unlocks a lot of opportunities.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, I know you guys are cost conscious, sadly for us, but no, that's awesome. So how do you go about cost optimization?
Great for us, Vercel has notifications on overages. We also have...
I like to call it on-demand usage.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes we receive way too much traffic, so I'm not complaining about it. So we have those notifications that keep us keep us on our toes. And no way do we stop anyone from implementing new features or trying out new things. Our first priority is to get things out there for the readers to try. And while we have an oversight on these metrics, we carefully make sure that we know how much compute. We kind of calculated how much compute would we need, how much bandwidth, data bandwidth, network bandwidth would we need in order to continue with our growth. We also have alerts set up on our own cloud service providers so that we can have more control over the amount of expenses that we are incurring. Because we are bootstrapped, we don't have any funding. That is the primary reason why we are extremely cost conscious. And that's also the reason why we kind of want to amplify our ROI on every investment that we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to me, actually, most interesting trend in how you pay for compute that's happening on our platform is kind of the change in paradigm of the unit of cost for serverless. So in the traditional kind of Lambda originated serverless products, the cost is gigabyte seconds, and that's gross compute. But on a front-end workload, it's very common that you actually talk to some backend. Mm-hmm. And with a traditional serverless product, you pay while you do nothing, right? You just wait for the backend to come back and idle the machine. And because there's no concurrency on these compute services, you basically you have to pay for waiting. And so that's one of the things that I think is really interesting about our Edge Functions product is that you pay for net CPU. So if you wait for I/O, if you wait for your backend to return with some kind of call, you only pay for when you actually do processing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a good opportunity to actually substantially lower serverless bills in a very meaningful way. Definitely.
I think a lot of these things can also help us reduce the operational overheads that we have within our own backend infrastructure that integrates between our headless CMS and the Vercel cloud setup. So yeah, I think we're going to save more money soon.
Cool. We're so well on time. Is there maybe an audience question? We have time for one or so.
There's one. Yeah.
There's one. All right. Sure. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm just really curious. How is moving to Vercel? How has that improved your core web vitals?
I'll repeat it really quick for the audience. So the question is about how moving to Vercel was and how did it work in terms of core web vitals.
Well, the first thing is the whole bootstrapping process. The way the assets would be chunked, they would be bundled. I think we don't need minute investments in that to optimize each and every module that we include. That process helps us. Another process that helps us is the ability to quickly roll out changes, see how they behave. I think another thing that helps us with Core Web Vitals is the repeat performance, right? With the usage of Edge Cache, we speed up repeat visits significantly, and they mean a lot for us because we have viral content. So at any given point, if a piece is ranking really good, it would have a lot of traffic and the cache would stay hot, and we would, like, incrementally our averages would go down more and more. And that doesn't, I don't mean to say that the first load is really slow, but the next loads are blazingly fast, like as good as an AMP page. Even though we do support AMP, but our web pages are as good as AMP. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so by the way, when I was at Google, I rolled all the page experience change. It's interesting to be on the other side. I think the biggest thing, especially when adopting Next.js, you can do for CLS in particular and performance in general is adopting Next image, and even in a way easier and more impactful Next font. It's sadly incredibly difficult to do font loading well on the web, but we thankfully kind of effectively solved it in a way that's like actually doable. It's such a it's in a way very sad that it's 2023 and loading a font on a web page is almost rocket science, but it's I think we're very close to solving that problem. Awesome.
It's actually really funny because there's so many websites you go in and see, okay, the font looks like this, and then in front of you suddenly in 1 second it changes everything on the screen.
Yeah, and the complexity, so what we do is we take your font, we extract the metrics from it, and then we generate a specific fallback font for the web fonts like Arial and Verdana that kind of force these web fonts to be the same metrics as your custom font, so that when the custom font loads, it replaces kind of in place without pushing everything else around. Which, again, like, it's sad that it's so complicated, but that's kind of the degree of optimizations you have to go through, and the benefit of getting it from a platform versus like, doing everything like this yourself. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we're right on time. Do you have any parting words for scaling enterprise web businesses?
Well, own your own data as soon as possible.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually a really good one to end on. If people want to get in touch, like, how can they reach you?
Well, I like drinking, so you can meet me at any bar in Amsterdam.
Excellent. I'll definitely be at our booth if people want to chat or up here. This is fun. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, everyone here, and have a great day.
Thank you.